Okay, my name is Kevin Nida, and I'm the region lead for FirstNet in California under Department of Commerce. And this is, every presentation we have we call FirstNet Today because it continues to evolve. Every month we get new information, new slide decks, and so this is a 25-year contract with AT&T. Just a couple of quick things. I've had questions about Band 14. Band 14 is not needed to adopt today. The network is ready to adopt today. What AT&T has done is reprogram their commercial network to allow priority and preemption. This was thoroughly tested in the lab prior to the hurricanes that we had in the southeast and was actually tested and used during the hurricanes. So they saw priority preemption and the advantage that provides. Basically what priority and preemption means is you get your data first, you get your message through first above the commercial network. And now we have the public safety core up and running. We had that began around May 1st, May 2nd, and so agencies that are adopting freshly now will move over directly to the FirstNet core. So FirstNet's journey. All of us remember 9/11, and anytime something terrible happens, a lot of people say, well, what is the government going to do about it? Radio interoperability was a huge problem. Cellular phone interoperability, and this is really before you had cellular data. This is back in the days of BlackBerries and flip phones. So tablets weren't really widely adopted. Most laptops had maybe some kind of card, but relatively slow connectivity, maybe around 19.2, what some of the narrowband data systems are. So 2004, the 9/11 Commission came out and they asked public safety, what do you need? And so radio operability was a big deal. We had hundreds of millions of dollars put into P25 radio systems. Now the systems have evolved to not only VHF, UHF 703 or 4 separate radios, but now all one radio. And some manufacturers now have embedded LTE in those devices. So you're going to see more and more cross-pollination of LTE and LMR. The LMR guys, obviously, want to keep LMR, and we understand that. We want them to keep that. The LTE guys thought, hey, we can overtake LMR. And we've said, no. We want to pollinate, cross-pollinate these two devices and basically use the best of each one. We've already seen within a year doing that. We've seen Sonim come out with a broadband device, and within a year in advance, they're going to have a VHF, UHF, what they call a sled that'll go on that. So here we have an LTE device that's adopting LMR, and a lot of the LMR manufacturers are going to put LTE in their device as well. So 9/11 Commission comes out, they recommend a national radio spectrum for public safety purposes. 2012, on February 22nd of 2012, FirstNet was created and funded, $6.5 billion through Congress. 2012 through 2015, they did a ton of outreach, talking to public safety about what they need, not what they want to sell them. This is not a sales pitch. This is a response to what public safety asked for, and that's exclusive spectrum in the broadband world to have priority and preemption to make sure your data gets through, just like our radios get through. Many of you may not know that our radio spectrum, our LMR spectrum, voice spectrum, has been exclusive since day one, since the 40s. Since the mid-80s, since cellular systems started, we've always been sharing with the general public, and now it's evolved to a point, and it was very evident in 9/11 and since then that we need our own spectrum and our own priority preemption capabilities. 2015, 2016, we consulted more after talking to the states individually and individual agencies. Then we went to all the state governors and their groups to make sure that they had what they wanted. We had a lot of meetings with AT&T, who's our contractor. And again, AT&T is a great organization, but this is not the AT&T network. The FirstNet network is totally different from AT&T. Once the system is built, every site, the only thing we're really going to share is spectrum and sites. But at that point, it bifurcates on fiber. They have their commercial core. We have our multi-node public safety core. So totally separate operation from the site. 2016, 2017, we issued a RFP. It was actually challenged in court, it was upheld, and AT&T was awarded that contract. In 1 year, they've started building the network, they built the core, they've actually started building Band 14 early with states that opted in early. So Texas was one of those. So 2018 through 2022 is where we've got to get most of the work done. So nationwide expansion and build out of Band 14 for the public safety broadband network. The other thing that I want to make really clear is FirstNet, First Responder Network Authority, is the only nationwide public safety broadband network. So it's the only one out there. It's the only one that's going to be out there, and we're designing it specifically for you. My job through public safety advocacy is to make sure that you get what you need, and if you're not getting what you need, you give me a call, and I run that up through our chain of command to make sure you get what you need. So there's a lot of discussions throughout the entire state. Every week I'm having meetings with different agencies, different associations to make sure that we understand what they want and that they've got my number, my email, my contact information, and I'm constantly in contact with our folks at AT&T to make sure that they understand what the needs are in California. So there are a lot of people like me in different FEMA regions. Region 9 is so big, they actually broke it up into sub-regions. So I've got California, and then I back up Arizona, Nevada, and then part of New Mexico, which is a different region, and then we have somebody else who handles the islands, including Hawaii. So this slide basically shows our relationship with AT&T. We own the contract. They're our contractor. So we want to make sure you have customer experience. We want to make sure you understand that we're bringing 20 megahertz of spectrum. That originally the FirstNet network was only going to be 20 megahertz wide. That's it. And so AT&T, as part of their offering, brought all 167 megahertz of their bandwidth plus our 20. So we're going to be able to have priority and preemption over almost 190 megahertz bandwidth, and that does not include 5G when that's built out. We will have priority and preemption over that as well. Public safety experience, so there are many folks like me who have got prior law enforcement, fire service, EMS, emergency management, dispatch, comm center experience. And so we leverage all that experience to make sure that you get a great product. And program management. We've seen some programs not go well, and we want to make sure that we're managing it correctly. So the government does great when it comes to, you always hear about government oversight. Okay, we're the government oversight to make sure this goes well. What AT&T brings is they bring $180 billion infrastructure. So they already have obviously a broadband network that's up and running. It runs really well. It needs more coverage. It needs more capacity. And so that's where we come in. So essentially, we're providing $6.5 billion to build out. They're going to reinvest another $40 billion over the next 25 years. So the funding that you pay right now will actually be self-funding for that network in the future to continue to build it out. They have a lot of technology and innovation they've already employed without reinventing the wheel. They have a lot of telecom experience and expertise, so they know what it takes to build a network and maintain it. We're not trying to go uphill with that. And they have a very secured network. Security is a huge deal, and we have a few more slides that we'll talk on that. So public safety priorities. We want to deliver on what public safety has asked for. We want a highly secure network to meet public safety's needs. All of the app developers, we've had several hackathons, and all of the app developers we've talked to, we've said, look, security first, then nail down the requirements to make sure your project goes well and you have that foundation and build from there. About 80% of all of the apps that we've tested in our test lab so far have failed, 80%. And what's more interesting is that out of the ones that failed, a good number of the agencies or companies that make those apps, they didn't want to fix the security problems. So when we have our app store is up and running now, and when you become a member, those apps have been tested, they're fully certified, and they'll be available for you. So when you're looking for apps, you can start there to make sure that they're safe. We want to have controlled access by public safety agencies for their users. So again, security is very, very important. And coverage where public safety operates. So we've got to build this network out into areas and provide other tools into areas where you have 99% above ground coverage. And obviously, we've got to cover Alaska. We've got to cover areas that are very, very, very remote. And we have different tools to do that. We want to make sure we have an enhanced user experience so you're happy with it, because the coverage and our adoption, our success is based on whether you adopt or not. And if we don't have the coverage, you can't adopt. If we don't have the customer service, you can't adopt. If we don't have the products, you can't adopt. So that's why there's going to be continued discussion and dialogue for the next 25 years with folks like you and folks like me to make sure that we're getting what you need and having vendors that are able to deliver those products. So I won't go into this too deeply, but our technical, marketing, legislative, and stakeholders are our main pillars for driving standards. We want to drive standards. We don't want to control those standards, but we want to have APIs so different products talk to each other. We understand that if different products are all siloed, that may not work for everybody. So we want to make sure that at some level, whether it's CAD to CAD or other levels, we have device interoperability and application interoperability. Our main priorities in 2018 are to expand our network through the build-out of the state radio access networks and Band 14 nationwide. But in addition to that, every site that's going to have Band 14 is going to have all of the AT&T spectrum. And they're not only using our funding, but they're using other funding to build out their network as well. So we want to be the best network out there. We have to be for public safety. We're going to test current and future network features in the Innovation and Testing Lab. So we have a lab in Boulder, Colorado, which is connected to NIST. And that's where they get all of the intel on how the apps are working and what products are out there and how we need to make them work at the best possible security level. We want to work with vendors, not to push them away, but to include them, but they've got to meet certain standards to be included. And we want to drive that adoption and make sure they understand what those standards are. We want to grow the application ecosystem for public safety. So we've all seen apps. You have a lot of great apps here today, but as our job changes, the apps need to change and evolve. And so we want to adopt that. We want to make sure that we continue to push the vendors that are making apps. They just don't make one app, one version. They continue to adopt that based on your work and the work that you're going to do in the future. Our FirstNet core was launched in March. So the entire month of March, it went through acceptance testing and it passed. The entire month of April, they loaded 20 agencies on that network to do further testing. It continued to pass and perform very, very well. And so in May, they are now loading agencies that are adopting onto that network. So we're focusing on engagement, advocacy, and innovation. There are a bunch of different branches within FirstNet. Ours is public safety advocacy to make sure that you have what you need. So user advocacy, response coordination, product solutions, innovation, et cetera. So response coordination is a big deal. So we're going to be standing up along with AT&T a response group that's actually going to respond out to incidents, to work with the comm unit, to work through the chain of command, to work through the things that you need to make sure you've got broadband at your incident. And you may normally have it, but if you need more coverage, or if you have a wildland incident working with UAVs, this is going to be really exciting to bring wildland, or to bring broadband to the wildland, and be able to have the same kind of connectivity you have in the city out in that area. So just like NIFC would respond and provide the comm unit with a narrowband voice solution, in the future you'll get FirstNet responding with deployables, as small as backpacks, as big as large trucks to meet your needs. So the agencies that we interface with, obviously police, sheriff, state police, corrections, et cetera, career fire, volunteer fire. 80% of the fire departments in the U.S. are volunteer. And so we have programs to allow volunteer firefighters with a letter from their agency to participate in FirstNet, because we want to make sure they have priority and preemption as well. Our public safety advocacy team, obviously educate and inform, collaborate, influence. So we want to collaborate. We want to get your ideas. We want to see what works for you, what doesn't work for you. We want to bring that back to our leadership so we can message that to vendors and to end users. For agencies that will become members and go to that FirstNet application store, for the chiefs and managers that really aren't sure what is good for their department, they'll be able to see what's out there. The agencies that have already adopted, be able to talk to those agencies and see what's worked for them, and make sure that the app that you buy is sized right for your agency. Not all apps are going to work for everybody. So you want to make sure you get the right one. You want to certainly make sure you get the training along with that app. We want to influence interoperability, not only with communications, but devices. So we want to make sure that these devices are working perfectly, not only on our network, but off network. So I know a lot of us in the fire service, we work in VHF or 700, 800, analog, conventional, simplex. Off network is where we go. I can't, the short 15, 16 months I've been with FirstNet, it's interesting how many developers go, well, how often do you go there? How often do you go off network? I go, every day. Every day. And we talk about horizontal polarization and on the floor, in a building, in a basement. They're like, well, how often do you go there? I go, it doesn't matter how often. It means that we go there, we got to have coverage there. So off network's a big deal. In less than a year, we were able to convince Sonam, you need to make off network. If you're going to be a player, you got to have off network. There'll be a lot of devices that'll be on network only, but the more progressive manufacturers are realizing off network is a key to their success. So again, cross-pollination is really, really important. Our public safety core. So again, this is dedicated to public safety. There's not going to be any commercial traffic on this. This is multi-node. It's geo-redundant. So if something happens in the southeast of the country and would happen to damage that core, we have other cores that will take that over. The number of cores and where they are sensitive, so I'm not going to talk about that. But it's been designed to pretty much withstand earthquakes, fires, floods, and anything else that this country can throw at it. The devices will see multiple nodes at the same time, so if any node fails, the device doesn't see that. It just continues to operate. So QPP, our quality of service priority preemption is extremely important. Quality of service is how we actually measure how the network is working, and how we hold our contractor to that network. So we have different metrics that we use to measure that and to make sure that the sites are up. Obviously, with the Santa Rosa fires, the fires we've had in the Ventura area, network resiliency is really, really important. Getting a network back up in a couple of days is not acceptable. We've made that really, really clear. Making sure that we have the proper brush clearance, the proper defensible space, that we know we're going to treat that just like we would structure protection or some kind of other valuable, super valuable asset. We want to know where those sites are. Many of these sites aren't mapped. The carriers know where they are, but we don't know where they are. So we want to make that part of our incident action plan, and again, working through the chain of command, not going outside of that, but working within the established comm unit, making sure that we're communicating where those sites are, where we need protection, making sure we protect that backhaul. We look at ways to backfill backhaul if we have a problem, and also make sure we have deployables either in staging or pre-deployed if we anticipate an outage. We want to be able to anticipate that and plan for that and be able to react quickly. So we're going to support band 14, non-band 14 devices. So what that means is if you're a current AT&T user right now, if you're a current AT&T customer, you can simply roll over to FirstNet by having a SIM chip swapped out. It's not a big deal to do. You can talk to your AT&T rep about doing that. If you have a non-AT&T device, you still don't need band 14. You can just have that device reprogrammed to work on the network. There's some devices that are older that actually have to be swapped out. But again, don't think you've got to buy all new modems or all new devices to adopt FirstNet. You do not need band 14, and you won't need band 14 for a long, long time. It's going to take 4 or 5 years to get the network built out. We're still going to have backwards compatibility. We realize it takes some agencies a long time to swap out devices. So band 14 is not an issue today, and really won't be probably until about 7 or 8 years out. By that time, the devices that are being used today will be retired. Priority and preemption for primary users at no additional charge. Some carriers charge extra for that, and they didn't have the level of priority and preemption that we have on our core. So that's going to be a lot of agencies that have adopted have actually seen savings when they got that quote back from FirstNet.com. And 3 levels of priority can be assigned for public safety agencies. The whole idea is to bring an entire city over, so you have primary and extended primary. The extended primary can then be uplifted. And we have a lot of folks that haven't lived through some of the disasters that we have, so they don't understand that, animal regulation, evacuating horses, evacuating animals, reuniting animals with people is a really important function. When the fire's over, as we've seen up in Ventura County, and you have the floods, well, what's important then? Well, the cleaning up, right? So you've got dump trucks, you've got loaders and all that stuff. You got to have communications, and you want to be able to see where they are. So the network can provide location-based services simply by having a device. You might have a regular 2-way radio that somebody's going to use, but that doesn't have location-based services. So by simply giving them a device, now you can give them mapping, you can send them information, and you can see where they are on the network. The other thing, too, is that you can uplift them as a primary user for 1 hour or up to a week automatically. And then after that time period expires, they roll back. So you'll have location-based services. You'll have local control like you've never had before. So being a FirstNet user is a real differentiator because you're on a dedicated prioritized public safety network. Now, the core itself is going to be at about 10% capacity. So they built the core that's going to last for 25 years. It's going to have a 90% surplus. So it's going to be really fast. It's not going to be bogged down. That's one of the things that was also part of the RFP. So at network launch, we provided a flexible multi-level priority solution that positions us for future enhancements. Again, 15 years ago, before there were smart devices, who knew that you'd have a smart device, an iPhone or a tablet, and the different variations of those? So what are we going to have in 12 more years? We really don't know. What are we going to have in 25 years? We're only really guessing. So, but we know that it's going to need a resilient network. So governance is also important, making sure that we're within incident command and following that unified command. I get the question all the time, who's going to make the decision of what our uplift is and who's going to do that? I go, it's going to follow ICS. It's going to follow the same procedures you do today. The communist is going to work within that chain of command, and decisions will be made with the IC or with unified command on who needs priority, who gets it. But the bottom line is for public safety first responders, you automatically get it. There's no uplift. There's nothing to do automatically. Your devices are already pre-programmed to provide that when you are working every day. Dedicated support. Again, we have 24/7, 365, a single FirstNet number, US-based representatives that understand public safety, understand the demographics of the country. we have international support lines for our U.S. territory. So we go as far out as the Marianas Islands, Guam, Samoa. Hawaii has gotten very interesting lately. Eight separate islands, all with different connectivity issues. So I learned the other day that they have VOG, V-O-G. We have fog, they've got volcanic fog. Very, very irritating and very problematic for people with health issues. Never heard of that before. So this slide basically just goes through our different initial operating conditions. So IOC 1, we're in IOC 2 now. 3, 4, and 5 get more interesting when we're hopefully complete. We will be complete in 2022 or before. AT&T is committed to honoring the contract, but also being completed before the contract. So we're going to see hundreds of additional sites in California. That does not include the 5G build-out. This is totally 4G and band 14. Our test lab, been there a few times, and it's pretty impressive. We've hired really the smartest people we can get. We've hired them from industry, so they know what industry does to make things work a certain way. We've also gotten people from NIST and others to be able to give us security briefs and, again, really understand what some of the manufacturers do, making sure that we don't have problems. Recently, it was public that 2 DoD contractors providing cell devices to DoD facilities have been basically those facilities have been told they can no longer sell those products. They were made offshore. They found that they had certain spying characteristics. I won't say much more than that, but they can't be sold anymore. And I wondered, I'll never know for sure, but I wonder how much FirstNet and how much NIST had to play in that. Probably did. So not only do we want to prevent issues by making sure we have high security, but we do have a security operations center that's monitored 24/7, and they're looking for those threats, and they take immediate action to resolve those issues before they're noticed really on the network. 3GPP, we talk about mission critical push to talk. Again, we're not taking away anyone's radios. What we want to do with mission critical push to talk is we want to take your radios, we want to take that audio, put that into our core, be able to push that out to push to talk devices to expand your network. So obviously a lot of the chiefs are from out of town, and you can't hear your regular radio traffic. So if you had a big incident and you wanted to hear what was going on and you wanted to hear channel by channel, how would you do that? And again, PulsePoint's a great tool, but it doesn't have that channel-by-channel capability. It's more of a scanner, so it's a great tool for what it is. But this will allow you to receive and transmit on any one of your talk groups or any one of your channels. So it has incredible capabilities. So it'll give that to you on your tablet, on your any kind of smart device. For in-building coverage, and I'm not sure what the coverage is here in this building, but again, there are thousands of distributed antenna systems that AT&T has installed. The upshot with not having band 14 needed right away is that every device in those in-building systems is going to get priority preemption. Depending on how it's built out, we're working on priority preemption on Wi-Fi as well. We really want to leverage Wi-Fi in addition to the DAS systems. And so there are 6,000 of those, and there are over 40,000 Wi-Fi hotspots throughout the country, and that number is growing every day. Talk about rural coverage briefly. Any location that's got greater than 20,000 people or adjacent to 50,000 people has got to be covered. So how we're going to do that is obviously build out a lot more sites. We're also going to have rollover devices. CAL FIRE's already adopted a different product, but it still can work on FirstNet, where they prioritize broadband, then narrowband, and then roll over to satellite. So again, we want that to be seamless for the customer. Deployed assets, they have 120 deployables right now. They're going to be adding 72 more under contract. And this is just the beginning. Agencies will be able to procure these. And in the future, I kind of see these as devices that Cal OES or the other agencies will collaborate and be able to share devices to provide that interoperability and existing connectivity where they need it. So obviously, our discipline-specific solutions. Public safety homepage, so essentially you're going to be able to see the network status. This is first, none of the other carriers are doing this. Again, this is public safety sensitive, but you'll be able to see the network, you'll be able to see sites that are having problems. This is going to really be important when we have an incident and the comm unit leaders are talking to, the comm staff is talking to our network operations center to make sure that they've got the coverage they need. How can they optimize that coverage without sending deployables, or we get the right type of deployable and get those interfaced into the network. Application mission, I know we're running short on time, so we'll zip through this. I'm going to be here during the social event, and again, this is just our first introduction. So please contact me afterwards. Take my email. We do individual presentations for departments, agencies, or groups, other associations. So we want this to be the first, not the last engagement. ICAM is our security system. So basically, when you sign on once, you get into the entire network. We have mobile device management, so you can program one device and then clone the rest of the devices in the agency to better manage those. CJIS, we're going through the CJIS process now to make sure that on the law enforcement side or fire agencies that have an investigative branch meet the CJIS requirements as well. Kind of blow through this here. Let's see. Device ecosystem. This slide really shows our relationship. FirstNet.com on the right side is AT&T, but that's a separate group within AT&T. So they've actually set up an entire group within their company. And then First Responder Network Authority, or FirstNet.gov, is our side of the group. Again, FirstNet.gov, FirstNet.com for more information. Stay connected. We've got lots of social media and things going out every day to let people know what's new and how we're growing. And that's my contact information email. Thank you.